Well, Jono, first of all, how are you settling in at the job?
Yeah, really good. Really enjoying it actually. Club have been really welcoming. Got a really good coaching setup there now, and sort of committee behind us, and the players have been brilliant. So no complaints so far.
Now, of course, it's not everyone's first choice to go to a club that's just been relegated, so you obviously see that as a big personal challenge as well.
Yeah, as I said, I took a year and a year a bit out of coaching, just helped out doing a bit of refereeing in the borders, and that opportunity came up, and spoke to a few people about it, and decided to phone the club, put in an application, had an interview, and was offered the role. So yeah, look, it's an exciting time down there. It's a bit of a reset for the club. So obviously getting relegated wasn't ideal, but there's reasons behind that last season, and it's just a case of now just getting embedded in that one, avoiding that dreaded bottom three. And as I say, just a rebuild from top to bottom, really.
What do you think were the reasons for the kind of slump in the club's performance, and obviously, sitting at the bottom of the table, which is not where we expect Jed to be, of course.
Yeah, look, I don't know because I wasn't there, but judging from what I've heard since I've been there, it doesn't help that coach left at the start of the season. And then there was people there trying to help out who were more of a sort of part-time helping out. So if you've not got a regular coaching setup, you've not got quality sessions, impacts on players. I believe there was a few people that left off the committee at the same time. So I think there was just a whole range of reasons that all happened at the same time, and it impacted on the players, unfortunately.
A long injury list as well.
Yeah. Injury list. I think they've got half their team still out in Australia. So
yeah. I was going to say, because I mean the running joke, of course, was the fact that you could almost put a team out in Australia.
Yeah, I believe so, judging by some of the numbers that I've seen. But look, I think, as I say, I think everything just happened all at once, and if you have one or two of those events, it's not helpful. If you've got all of them at the same time, it just turns out how it is, unfortunately. But no, as I say, now numbers are back at training. Things are really positive. We've had a good start to pre-season, and we'll get into the league this weekend.
I was going to say we won't dwell on the past now, because it's a club that needs to look forward and will look forward, and you're obviously looking forward, not back as well, starting off with a clean bill of health and a clean slate right across the board, and obviously it's looking positive.
Yeah, look, as I say, it's looking really positive. Numbers at training have been good. We've had a good pre-season. We went to People Sevens, got beat in the final by a really good Melrose side. And then we had a little trip down to York, played Driffield on the Friday night with basically a full first and seconds squad down there. We've had Gala Sevens, unfortunately it didn't go our way just the first game, but and then we played Selkirk at the weekend and had a really good game, and some of the stats that come out of that were brilliant. So yeah, moving forward, I say it's all looking positive, and I'm really happy with how pre-season's gone. So.
Well, I'm smiling at you, because there is one result that you did miss out, and that was the one at Berwick, 61-0. People, obviously, they look at a result like that. There's got to be a story behind it.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, the Lions result. So Lions is our seconds, have been rebranded the Lions now. It was let's just say, a lot of boys that were kind of thrown together. A lot of them hadn't been at training yet due to farming, work, etc. So going down to Berwick against a really strong, established side like Berwick, unfortunately, it didn't go our way. But from what I've been told by the coaches that were down there, the boys stuck in right to the last minute. They just got out-muscled up front. And unfortunately, when you're out-muscled up front, you don't get much ball. Line-out didn't function. Scrum. So.
But better it happen as a warm-up game rather than a league game.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and look, I mean, Berwick are in. what are they up to now? National.
They're in Nat 2, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it was so Berwick in National 2. As I say, they're a really established side. They're experienced. They're National 2 against our seconds, who, as I say, majority of them hadn't been at training as of yet. So it was a chuck together team, and they've gone there, and that was their first game for I don't know how long for Jed Seconds, or as I say now it's called the Lions. So it's good to get that team out, and they had another game on Saturday there against Dalkeith at 1 o'clock before we played Selkirk, and it was 41-all. So they went from 61-0 to 41-all against a really good Dalkeith side, an established side. Again, Dalkeith are coming up through the leagues as well. So they've turned it around really quickly, and it's good that they've had 2 back-to-back games after going last season without many games at all, if any.
And of course, you only lost to Selkirk Premiership side now, of course. You're down in National 1 by 10 points.
Yeah, we had a video review last night with the players, and the one thing I said, the only disappointing thing about that game was the result. Got the stats through. We had more possession, we had more lineouts, more scrums, more penalties, and more 22 entries. It's just the new structure that myself and Herdy and Ryan have been putting in just takes time to bed in, and that's all it is. It's just a learning curve for structures. But if you look at the actual stats, the stats look really good. It's just the result, 10 points in it in the end. I think once the players get more confident and more up to speed with what we're trying to do, that game's totally different.
A couple of quirky things now, because you mentioned you went to refereeing. You had obviously some time at Melrose and Gala and a little bit of Hoyt. We don't really call Hoyt because the season hadn't even started then, and all sorts of things came in, COVID and all the rest of it. But you went into refereeing, which is kind of Ian Hurd's domain, and now it's kind of like in reverse. You're back in coaching, and you've brought Hurdy with you.
Yeah, so I can't remember when it was. It was January 22, maybe, that there was an under-18s game. Herdy was struggling to find a referee, and I said I would help out just for a one-off. Didn't want to see a game getting called off at that level when I had a Saturday free, so said I would go and do that, and then the usual, you do it once and then the following weekend they were short, so I ended up doing about 3-4 games back to back under 18s. Ended up refereeing some East 1 games and some Shield games. So one of the last games I did was Langham, Hoyk, Lindeen in the Shield. So
that would be feisty.
Yeah, it was. I was warned it would be feisty. It actually was not actually as bad as what I thought. I know quite a lot of the players, like a lot of the Langham boys and the Hoyk Lindeen boys are experienced, shall we say. So I know a few of them. I know the coaches. So it was actually a good game. It was. I don't know, I quite enjoyed my time at refereeing. It's just different. You go from a team environment, playing or coaching, to turning up on your own with 2 separate sides, and you're the only person there yourself. So it is different, but I did enjoy it, and it helped out for however long it was, 12 months in the Borders, just when I know that referee numbers are light, and they've got a big push on referee numbers. And if I could do my bit, then I will do. Helped Herdy out as well, and as you say, I've kind of now asked for that favour back, shall we say. Look, Herdy was going to be finished with refereeing anyway. I had a coffee with him, and look, Herdy's been involved in rugby for a long period of time, so, and he enjoys it, but coaching's totally different from the refereeing side. So Herdy took a couple of weeks to have a think about what he wanted to do, and then decided that he would like to get involved in coaching. And look, he's came into Jed, and he's been brilliant. His knowledge around the technical area, the laws, and his technical knowledge around rugby is unbelievable. I mean, he's been pretty much a professional referee, reffed at European Rugby Cup games, Premiership level when I was playing. So I'm not going to turn that down if it's offering to help. And boys have taken really well to Herdy as well, and as I say, the knowledge that he brings from the rugby side, just when you're looking at breakdown or the new tackle height or some of these new laws that have come in this season, his experience is good to have.
It's interesting as well because one of the last Jed coaches was Scott Tomlinson, of course, and of course he was the coach of St Boswell's when they went through that fantastic period a few years ago, about 2016 now, a long time ago, and of course he was a referee as well as a player, and so you've been doing some refereeing. Hurdy, obviously a referee as well. That's pretty important, isn't it? Being a coach and having that on your side, knowing the rules and knowing how to how the referee's effectively going to be looking at a game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I certainly had a different perspective going back into coaching after refereeing, and it was more around players' attitudes to referees, how they ask questions, how they speak to the referee. It's previously as a player and then as a coach, you always said about how you can easily get referees offside by the way you speak to them, the way you interact with referees. But until you've actually been on the other side of it and you've experienced that as a referee, you never actually realised how much you could actually get a referee offside. And as a referee, you try not to let player actions effectively impact on your decisions, but if it's 50-50 and you've had a player nipping your ear for quite a while,
it becomes 51-49.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So learning that side of things from the referee side, to take that into down at Jed, and say, as you say, having Hurdy on board to basically not back that up, basically effectively lead that. The players have took really well to it, and some of the feedback from referees, certainly at Peebles Sevens especially, has been really positive in terms of how we've been interacting with refs now, and so if we can keep that going during the season, then these 50-50 decisions that might sometimes go against you might go for us. So.
And I think certainly, from the experience, I know Andrew Skeen's turned to refereeing, a great player, of course, and yourself, and Mike Adamson, who's gone on to tremendous things as well after playing rugby for Scotland Sevens and doing extremely well. And I was talking to certainly Mike a long time ago, and he was saying he just felt more respected because he'd been a player rather than a referee who nobody kind of knows. Did you kind of find that people, because they knew that you played at the highest level, that they would give you a little bit more leeway?
Yeah, I never actually thought about it, but thinking back, potentially yes. As I say, the players were always really positive after games and respectful as well. I don't think I ever had any players effectively shouting at me during games, or you had questions, but all the questions came across in the right way. I like to try and have a bit of banter with the players as well, just keep it that friendly way as well. And I don't think there's many times where it's had any sort of heated confrontations with players. So no, you're probably right that coming from a player's background and I think understanding the game helps players understand your decisions a bit better.
But despite all of that, and the fact you were enjoying refereeing, you wanted to get back into coaching again, and you must have obviously had your interview. What was your pitch like to the powers that be at Jed-Forest? Because they're obviously looking for a completely different scenario to the season that they've just been in, and they must have asked you some tough questions. How are you going to turn this round?
Yeah, seems like a long time ago now, and I can't remember a lot of the questions, but I just went in, gave them a bit about my background, which they already knew anyway from my CV. I had some previous session plans and game shape plans, just give them an idea of what the paperwork I would give to the players to show what we were trying to achieve, some homework if you might, and more just touched on probably the previous successes I've had coaching. So obviously I went into coaching at Melrose after I finished playing when Jim Telfer left the under-18s, and I had my knee operation, and I was asked to help out just as a coach there, first time, and we won the league and we won the Kings of the Sevens and got beat at final of the Boris Cup at the under-18s. And John Dale went down to London Scottish. Bob Christie took over the head coach role and then asked me to step in and take the forwards at Melrose. And we had a successful season there, and then I did a dual role between the firsts and the seconds at Melrose. Seconds won the league, and firsts won either the Premiership or the Cup that year. And then we had Super 6 came in, so Bob Christie went up to do the Southern Knights. I took on the head coach role of what was then the Melrose club sides. Unfortunately, it was obviously cut short by COVID, but that Melrose club side then, the first 15, was really Melrose seconds from the year before. And we had a look at the stats, and I remember that the average age at one point was about 19 across the squad, and we were sitting third in National 1, so it was a really good season, cut short by COVID, and then there was a big change at the club from the top, and they wanted to go in different directions, so that's when Bill Noble and Fraser Thompson were at Gala. Actually, apologies, I was at Hoyk. I went to Hoyk just to help out during that COVID season, just for sessions, etc. Season never got started, and then personal circumstances dictated that I couldn't continue, and that's when Gala phoned and just asked if I'd go down and help out just with, it was Bill and Fraz just asked if I'd go down and have a look at just some lineouts for them, because they didn't really have a forwards coach, and again it's that same thing, you go down once and got back into it, ended up going down Tuesday, Thursdays, but it was good because I didn't have the pressure of being a head coach. Fraz was taking care of all that and doing a really good job, and then Bill Noble was there as director of rugby, so it was more just lineouts, forwards. And again, we had a really successful season. Missed out on promotion by 1 point to Heriots. Then the following season, Fraz's personal circumstances changed a little bit with work. He had to take a bit of a step back. So I just took a bit of the workload off of Fraz, and we worked together on that. Jacko then came in, which helped. So again, you've got with Bill Noble, and he had Fraz and Jacko and myself. The pressures weren't there from just being in charge yourself. That we spread the load, and again had a really, I would say, a successful season. We're sitting third when I left, I believe. So I just focused on that in my interview, just the successes that I had. And if you look at, again, I don't want to speak badly of Gala, but the following season, so I've left, they were third or fourth, then the following season they're second bottom with the same squad or similar. So it was mostly just focusing on what I've achieved previously and what I could bring to the role, and as I say, they were quite happy with that, and I had some questions about what had happened previously, what players were still there, and I decided that they were on the right track in what they'd already put in place to try and right those wrongs, and me going in has just helped that, and the players have come back as well, and I think the players have bought into what I've brought, and as I say, brought in obviously some really good coaches as well. With, I say, we've already spoke about Hurdy, and then Ryan Ormiston is back from Australia, so obviously Ryan played at Gala, came to Melrose for a little bit, and then he went out to Australia, and he was coaching out there for the last 12 years, and he's moved back here with his wife and daughter, living in Cloven, and I just picked up the phone and said, "Do you want to get back involved?" We'd been speaking while he was out there, because he knew he was coming back, and he said if I was getting back involved in rugby, that to give him a shout, because he'd be keen to do something. So yeah, it's probably worked out all very well at the right time, with Hurdy finishing referee and Ryan coming back from Australia. So I've got two experienced coaches in there. Then you've got Michael Elder and Michael Weekly, who were the seconds coaches, and they've carried on now with the Lions. And I suppose Mike Dalgetty.
Now there's a name you want on your side.
Yeah, Mike is on the committee now at Jed, and obviously I've worked with Dash for a long period of time at Melrose, and again it's someone else with a huge amount of experience, and just having him sitting above on terms of the committee with, I should mention Paolo as well as director of rugby, that having people like that with the experience, that there's that many different people down at Jed. John Davidson's another one. Paul Cranston's been there for a long time. Billy Grieve. I mean, I could go on with the people that were involved there, but it helps knowing that I've got coaches working alongside me that I can trust and I can rely on, and they've got their experience, but above that as well, from a committee's point of view, that there's somebody there that can help and can bring that experience, and Dash and John Davidson probably two of the best. I mean, the good thing about Jed is that they have a history of producing good quality players, and if you look now, like, you start with the experienced players, you've got Gregor and Lewis Young, who have both come back this season. Gregor's featured quite a bit. Lewis has been caught up with work, but he's now coming back into the fold. Robbie Shearer-Gibbs on one of the wings. You've got Robert Hogg, who's still running around.
Rory Marshall.
Yeah, Rory Marshall. Gary Young and Finn Scott have come back from the Knights. Again, huge experience. Clark Skeldon was involved in Knights previously. Ben Thorringham's still there for a bit now and had a bit of runabout for the Knights. So the experienced guys are there, but you look at the quality of players that Jed produce. I mean, some of the younger guys, so like Robbie Douglas at 9 was outstanding on Saturday against Selkirk. Owen Cranston. But then there's 4 guys from the Thistle from last season. 3 of them started against Selkirk. So Aaron Weatherhead at 10, Matty Palmer at fullback, and Matty Beaton on the wing, and then you've got Louis Reid that played for the Lions and sat on the bench, and Robbie Duff came off the bench in the front row, all from the Thistle. So they've got that conveyor belt players. They always have had that conveyor belt players. It's just, I think the biggest thing down there is trying to keep the players. It's Jed's out the way a little bit, shall we say. So once players get to 18, if they're going away to uni, it's a big ask to come back from Edinburgh down to Jedburgh. It's an extra 15 minutes past any other town. So, but keeping these guys involved and involved at the rugby club is brilliant. And look, Aaron Weatherhead, Matty Palmer, Matty Beaton, Robbie Duff, and Louis Reid, 18-year-old going against Selkirk Premiership side, did not look out of place. So you mix the experience with the youth and then the guys in between, and there's a really good squad list there to work with.
And you mentioned right at the start the People's Sevens, where you made the final, did very, very well indeed, and the Thistle actually won the under-16 tournament, and something like that happening is fantastic news.
Yeah, so the under-16s winning was brilliant on was it the Friday night?
Friday, yeah.
Yeah, I think the under-18s got beat in the final as well, and then we got beat in the final. So, as I say, it just comes back to that conveyor belt of players, that if you look at the 16s winning, 18s getting beat in the final, and then we played 3 of the Thistle guys from last season at People's Sevens. Again, it was Matty Palmer, Aaron Weatherhead, and I think Matty Beaton played as well. So yeah, having that conveyor belt of players every season, if we can keep hold of them, is key to keeping. Want to keep players at the club, but being able to compete at the top level as well.
Yeah, because it's very difficult in National 1 when you've got 4 border sides in the Premiership, and that's obviously something. I mean, you've lost Mark Glenn, obviously, to Hawick, fantastic player. He was always going to be earmarked for something special, and I'm sure he'll go on from club rugby into greater things as well. But a club knows its place and knows that you have to produce your own, and it's so important at this time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I'll touch on it again, that where Jed is based, it's hard to attract, but you can't phone someone in Edinburgh and say, do you want to come and play at Jed, when they've got 6-7 clubs on the doorstep in Edinburgh. Then you come down the road, Peebles is the next closest club, which is in this Nat 1, Gala, Melrose, Selkirk, Kelso, all a lot closer than Jed. So being where it is geography wise, you have to produce your own players, and keeping these guys involved from 16s to 18s and then 18s to seniors is the only way that a club like Jed's going to survive where it's based, unfortunately. You're not allowed to pay anybody in that one, which I believe is the right way to go. But on the other hand, you've got nothing to attract players from likes of Edinburgh to travel an hour and 20 minutes down the road, unfortunately. So that home-based players is the way that the club has run all the years and will continue to run, and I say it still is doing that. And it's good that these boys that are stepping up from the Thistle are staying at the club, and they're actually going on and playing in board league games against Premiership sides and not looking out of place as well.
Clark Skeldon, we must pick him out as well. Is he captain again this season?
Yeah, Clark's captain and Rory Marshall's vice captain. So,
yeah. But Clark, I mean, absolutely. Last season in particular, I felt so sorry for him because we had to wheel him out to do the interviews and things like that. Never shirked once, completely stood up and represented his players and the club in a tremendous way. And it's just great to have someone like that at the helm to encourage the youngsters through.
Yeah, Clark's brilliant. I mean, he's got the respect of all the players down there. You can, as soon as he walked in the door, you can see that players respect him. He's, as I say, he played for the Southern Knights for a bit. He's a big man. He's a big physical man on the pitch, but off the pitch, he'll not mind me saying this, he's a bit like a big gentle giant, effectively. But he's just so friendly, so welcoming. But to have that respect of your players as well, and committee supporters, he just wears that Jed badge on his heart, and it shows. But not just him, like you mentioned, Rory Marshall, Gary Young, and Finn Scott coming back from the Knights. They could have went and played Premiership rugby, but they've come back and they're putting something back into their own club. These guys, we've mentioned Gregor and Lewis. Obviously, I'd say Owen Cranston was mentioned. He's been there around a bit of time now.
Yeah, he's becoming one of the...
Robert Hogg at 37, I think, came and played 20 minutes on Saturday. He played for the Lions, and then he went and played he sat on the bench and had a runabout against Selkirk as well. So there's a lot of experience down there, and a lot of guys that are willing to put in the work for Jed, because they're Jed through and through, and it's their home club, which is brilliant to see. And then again, if you're under 18 stepping up and you see that, it's hugely inspirational to these young guys as well, to go, actually, look at him, he's still, like Robert Hogg is still running about at 37, he's still good enough to do that. It's brilliant for the young players.
Absolutely, and you mentioned Owen Cranston as well, and a quick word for him, because he tends to come under the radar a wee bit, but he does some wonderful things on the pitch.
Yeah. He was down in Driffield. He played at 12, and he was outstanding. He's a physical player. Like, just give him a short ball and he'll get you over the gain line every time. He then played against Berwick, and the feedback from the guys there was he played at 13 and he was really physical defensively. Had some really good carries again, but again it's hard to do it yourself in kind of that environment. But he was one of the guys that certainly stood up across at Berwick, and then he came off the bench against Selkirk and unfortunately he hurt his shoulder a little bit, so his game ended a bit prematurely. But in the time he was on the pitch, again, he was outstanding, and he just added something off the bench. So but he does fly under the radar a little bit, and I think he maybe flew under the radar last season because he was playing at 10. And if you ask him himself, and he'll not mind me saying this, he prefers playing centre, which is where he's played now down in Driffield, and then against Berwick, and then against Selkirk. And I think his preference of a centre is definitely better as a centre, in my opinion, and he's certainly competing in that centre position.
Have to talk about Paulo Freire. I've done probably 6 retirement video interviews with him, and he's back again.
Yeah. So when I agreed to go down there, Paulo was going to be director of rugby, and there was no mention of him pulling the boots back on. We then started pre-season planning, started getting around all the players, player numbers started obviously increasing. We then planned in that York pre-season trip, which he was always going to come on as director of rugby, but as the rugby started getting closer, the the conversation changed from director of rugby to I might just have a wee run about at pre-season just to try and get myself a bit fitter. And I'd said the same, Ryan said the same, that we might just have and from mine and Ryan's point of view, it was literally just to try and get a little bit fitter. There was no talk of playing at all. I thought Paolo was very similar, but as we got into the training sessions, Paolo's mood changed a little bit, and he quite enjoyed himself, and now he played 60 minutes down at York. I think he had a little runabout against Berwick. He was struggling with his ankle a little bit. I told him just to keep himself for Selkirk, and then he played 45-50 minutes against Selkirk. So, but again, having someone like Paolo around is brilliant. His experience front row wise is second to none, and then just again, he's been at Jed that long. He knows all the players. He's got the respect of everybody, and again, he's such a nice guy that he's great to have around. And he's also doing some scrum coaching as well. So,
and very recently, I don't know if it was the previous season or the season before, even with the likes of Lewis and Gregor Young in there, Robbie Shiragib, all these players, Rory Marshall, he was top try scorer. Fantastic.
Yeah, top try scorer with a total meterage of about a couple of metres, total average of 0.1 metre. But no, look, his try scoring record is unbelievable for a prop. But yeah, short range, I would back him any day of the week. So he's good to have around. And you've got, like I mentioned him before, Robbie Duff stepping up from the Thistle as a young front row player. To have someone like Paolo there to use his experience, ask questions, get a bit of specialist front row coaching from. It's great for likes of Robbie Duff and Grant Paxton. I've not mentioned Grant. Grant had a shoulder operation last season. Missed most of the season, but he's come back in. He's raring to go, as Lou said. His shoulder's fixed, and he's been playing really well. Ryan Briggs, another front row. So these guys, having Paolo there is brilliant for them.
So what's the aim for this season? I mean, realistically, you want to avoid, obviously, the bottom three. 3 are going down. Do you think Jed are good enough for promotion?
Yeah, so the club's stance is avoid bottom 3 at all costs. They can't afford any club can.
Well, we've seen Aberdeen and they've gone free fall.
Yeah, Aberdeen, look at Boroughmuir, and obviously Super 6 had a part to play in that, but they just went free fall. Gala did it years ago. They went all the way down to National 3. Yeah, and it's once you get into that losing mentality from a player, it's hard to get out of it. So they've had a season now where they've not won a game. Avoiding that bottom 3 from the club's point of view is essential. You look at players, try to keep players. If you're playing down the leagues, that you'll lose players to Nat 1 to the Premiership. Like you mentioned, Mark Glenn going to play Premiership rugby. So to keep players is one, but for funding, supporters, sponsorship, all that comes into it. That we have to establish ourselves in Nat 1. Then we've already spoke about the players, the quality of players that's there, and then you've got coaches coming in who are ambitious. I don't want to be sitting there going, I'm happy with 4th bottom. I want to be competing at the top end of leagues.
And you've certainly got the players who can, there's no question about it.
You ask the player, every player, no matter where they're playing, whether it's down in East 3 or in the Premiership or anywhere in between, they want to win games. So players want to win games, and winning becomes infectious. Unfortunately, losing does as well. So for me, I want to be competing as high up as we can. Initially, we've said we'll see how it plays out the first 4 or 5 league games. That'll get a better gauge of where we're at. As I say, we're putting in new structures, new attack structures, new defence structures. So it takes time to embed that. And you can see that against Selkirk, that, as I mentioned it before, that our stats were all there. It was just what we were doing with the ball, and without the ball, it was the new structures that let us down. But it was the first time running about. I think we'll see a huge improvement this week against Biggar. But Biggar's not an easy place to go. Then we've got Boroughmuir, who obviously are now lost that Super 6 side. So what squad they'll have. I mean, I know Jordan Edmonds is there, so they'll have some quality players as well. And then you go into the Border Derby against Gala, and then we've got Highland. So it's not an easy start, but there's not an easy game in that one at all.
Absolutely, with Stirling County as well, of course, in the mix, and they've apparently, retained a lot of their Super Six side as well. So I mean, it's going to be an incredible season. I mean, no one really knows what's happening, and you mentioned about four weeks into it is when we'll get a picture. I think it's probably going to be even longer than that, maybe 6 weeks or so, that we actually find out, who's going to be going for promotion and who's not. But you mentioned Biggar, who you've got first up at Hartlepool, and that's not an easy place to go, as we know. Biggar had a fantastic pre-season last year, and then went on a run of about 8 losses before they actually found their feet again, got their players back from injury, and started climbing the table and doing really, really well. But Craig Borthwick, who you know very, very well, you've got Rhys Cullen down there as well. Scott McClymont from Selkirk is now part of the Biggar setup, and a lot of their homegrown talent as well. So not an easy fixture to kick it off.
No, if you look at fixtures, it's probably not one that I would choose, being Biggar away first game of the season. But on the other hand, I'd rather go there in September when the pitch is likely to be green and dryish, rather than December when the weather kicks in. And Hartlepool in the winter with a big forward pack is a horrible place to go, and it's a long 80 minutes, whereas at least we might be blessed with some sun in September. And I say the pitch should be in good condition, and obviously they've spent a lot of money on their grounds as well, so I think that's still ongoing. But no, look, Borth will have them well prepped. They played Kelso in a Border League game and in a pre-season friendly, and went really well. You mentioned obviously Rhys Cullen, the experience he'll bring is unbelievable to end in that one. Scott McClymont going from Selkirk is a big signing for them. You've got Vos at prop, who's been there a long period of time, and he's a big physical guy. Andy Jardine, who I know well from Melrose, and Andy's a brilliant player. He controls the game really well. If he's at 10 or if he's in the centre, he can crash it up, or he can play a wide game, and he's got a really good kicking game. So look, we're under no illusions that it's going to be a tough 8 minutes up at Biggar. But as I say, the focus is on ourselves at the moment. We don't know anyone in this league because of all the signings, all the changes with Super 6. First week, focus on ourselves. I say, focus on our structures from that Selkirk game. That we've had a big session last night on that, and it looked really good. If we can get that right, and we can get the same stats that we produced against Selkirk, then it'll be, I reckon it'll be a tight result. But there's no reason why we can't go there and pick up a result if we get ourselves right.
Do you, as head coach and the players collectively, do you feel pressurised at all going into this season?
I'm not sure about the players. I think the players are quite relaxed. They're a good bunch. They've got the experienced heads in there. Will keep that pressure at bay, I would say. But for me, going in there with the season they've just had, and the club, or any club, not being able to afford to drop down another league, that pressure is there just to avoid that bottom three. And I think, as I said, that the first 4 games are going to give us a good indication of where we'll be during the season. And I say it's not an easy start, the first 4 games that we've got, but if we could pick up a couple of results over these first 4 games, it'll put us in a better position. Whereas if you start off and you pick up a couple of defeats with a season that the players have just had, it's then getting into that mentality again of, right, when are we actually going to win a game? So I think for us, we need to pick up a win, and we need to pick up one in the first few weeks to get rid of that mentality, that to show the player that you can win games, and we can win games well.
Well, it's going to be a tough job. There's no for every club, not just Jed-Forest, but certainly thank you for your frankness today. It's always good to meet up with you for a chat. Yeah. There'll be plenty more chat along the way. It's a long, long season. And Stuart Johnson, thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.